little bit of a treat, something special. Every so often in the journey of winemaking, something special happens, something magical. Back in 2010, a mate of ours actually down in Tasmania wanted us to create a little bit of a wine for him. It was a bit of a quid pro quo, and it gave us the opportunity to dabble and make a method traditionnel, which is actually more commonly referred to as champagne. Anything outside of Champagne in France, we refer to as method traditionnel. So this is a wine that is near and dear to our heart, near and dear to my heart. I love it. It's one of those things that we have for everybody to grab a bottle of through cellar door. Usually when they drink it, it puts a smile on their face, and that makes me smile. Today I get to put a smile on your face. So we'll give it a shot. Where do you go? I mean, champagne is such a crazy, weird, unique sort of wine style. It's a totally different specialized field from making still or table wines. Requires a lot more finesse in regards to technique and structure. The winemaking equipment definitely is needed. This is actually a 2010 vintage. Spent 10 years on gross lees. So that means it was basically harvested, went through primary fermentation in the bottle, then it was, the dosage was added to the wine, and then it was put back down for 10 years, a decade. And at that stage, we decided to actually disgorge it. And that's where you take that secondary ferment plug out of the actual champagne by tipping the bottle upside down into some frozen water. And then we release the plug. We then add the dosage back to it to keep the bubble, and we cork it. Anyhow, take a glass. I'm just going to let that sit there so we can look at it. The bead. Talking about bead in sparkling wines is the bubble, how fine it is, how persistent those beads actually float to the top, and how long it continually goes. It's said that the finest of the wines have the finest of the bead, the smallest of the actual bubbles in it, and it's the most persistent and continuous. If you can take a look at that, it's quite an expressive little glass of wine. One of the things, I guess, that I always talk about with champagne, for people who aren't really cork dorks or, wine aficionados, every single bottle of champagne or method traditionnel is a totally unique wine. The only thing that's common is at that original start during harvest, where you make the base wine. That's all the same. And then what you do is you put it off into individual bottles and you dosage it for ferment. So that's where that wine starts to take its individual journey. So as it spends more and more time in its bottle, you actually take the crown seal off, disgorge it, put in the dosage, put a cork into it. It's starting to transition and change even more and more. So every single one of these bottles takes on a more unique individual personality. The commonality in this is actually showing that finesse and fine line that Tasmanian fruit has to offer. So if you smell it, to me it's got that real fresh sort of brioche, doughy, when you've baked donuts and you can smell it when it comes right out of the oven. And that's from the yeast contact in the hulls. There's a bit of vanilla to me and baked apple. Hints of, I always call it praline, chocolate with hazelnut in it. Yeah. What are they called? Boucher d'ors. My wife loves those. And then to me, there's almost a grapefruit peel characteristic. It's not really sharp, fresh grapefruit. It's almost like Rose's marmalade. Sweet tart. Yeah. When you drink champagne, I was always taught what you look for is acid rails. You want length and persistence, and that comes out of the Chardonnay. How that feels as it shoots down the back of your throat. Feel the bubbles dance on your tongue. I guess that's also where the whole water fairies concept for me always came from, is champagne is like having fairies dance across your palate. So that's what I envision when I actually disgorged and taste this wine for the first time. And obviously water fairies for us is highlighting the fact that it comes from the apple isle. It's disconnected from the mainland. It's often its own little unique, magical part of the land, and it produces some amazing fruit. It's not hard acid, your palate finishes, it's dry. You can feel your salivary glands kick in, your mouth is watering, and that's what champagne is great for. As an aperitif wine or a dosage when you're actually starting to eat food, helps to break down and emulsify what you have. I mean, traditionally everyone talks about oysters with champagne. That's one of my loves, especially here in South Australia. I used to like oysters when I grew up in Canada, eating oysters from the east coast of Canada and the west coast of the US. And when I got here, I actually found out that those oysters suck. We got the best oysters in South Australia. I mean, smoky, streaky, and Coffin Bay. Coffin Bay is probably most famous, but I love Streaky Bay oysters. They've got that real fresh melon characteristic, and when you have them freshly shucked with that little bit of salty content to it, as soon as I said that, as I said salty, you almost feel like there's a brine content on your tongue. It's almost after you drink the wine, you go, wow. There's almost a salt water characteristic. And that's not a negative. It's actually something that adds complexity to this wine, and it's that real sort of slaty minerality that comes out of this and the fruit that it produces from it. Special wine, we only produced 192 six-packs of this. And when we disgorged it a year and a half ago, we thought, oh, this is going to last us, you know, at least 10 years. We were 10 years patient. We're already running short. It's going fast, and every time I open it up, I want to have another bottle of it. So it's one of those special treats where time and patience allows you to actually see what can evolve in a bottle of wine, and this is a perfect example of what great Tasmanian method traditional can really produce. So I hope you enjoy. Cheers.